Great, cool. So nice and easy. If you just want to start by telling me kind of what you do and what your interests are in terms of your work and things like that.
Okay. So just remind me again what it's for and what you're going to do with it all before I start.
Oh, sure. Apologies. So yeah, so basically, where we are in the research is that we've gathered obviously residents of Tower Hamlets, the architect group, which Andy is a part of, and we've identified the areas or the segments of the food system that we want to look at, which is production, consumption, distribution and trading, and waste. And in the last convening or gathering of the architects, we decided the first stint of research should focus on production. And so what I've done is I've set up lots of interviews with people like yourself who have lots of expertise in this stuff. And what I'm doing is having semi-structured interviews with those people around particular research questions, which you would have been sent, but you don't need to know them now. We'll go through them. And then obviously from that, going to analyze it, and then that will inform a report that will come out next year around kind of actions that the Just Fact program will take, because it's action research. So the idea will be that we'll, based on these interviews and analysis, it will inform the actions next year that's taken by kind of our community of hubs and community centres and growers and things like that.
Okay. And am I allowed to know who else you're interviewing, just so I get a sense of the types of people?
Absolutely. Let me just get the list. So some of the people, so in terms of like generally, so it's like a mixture between practitioners, so people that are doing food growing, so people from Organic Glee, for example. I'm interviewing people from Sustain, people from Sutton Community Farm, and the mixture of and just people, community members that are kind of interested in growing food, and that's kind of the overview, I suppose. I did say to the participants that it'll be anonymous, so I don't think I can share names with you. But generally speaking,
fine, that's fine.
Yeah, it's like an ecosystem of academics, like people on the community members and practitioners.
Okay, so you have some academics as well. I'm not just the only one, and
yeah. You won't be the only academic I'm interviewing. Yes.
Okay, great. Go ahead. Yeah. So about me. So
yeah.
My name's Tara Garnett, and I run an initiative called Table at the University of Oxford, and I work on food and its interactions with a range of environmental, social, and ethical concerns. I have particular interest in climate change, and also in, as a subset of all these issues, of the meat question, because it's a kind of nexus of a whole range of questions and concerns around health, animal welfare, environmental degradation, and so forth, and it's very, very polarized. And Table is an initiative that is reasonably new, to set it up, and it's really trying to focus on what we talk about when we talk about food. It's trying to look at how different stakeholders conceive of the food problem, what the problem is and what drives it, and what the root causes are, and how these shape their analysis of what constitutes a solution. So why do some people believe that the future is all small-scale agroecology, and other people believe that it's all about precision agriculture, precision tech, lab meat, and so on and so forth? What are the values and the evidence that people bring to discussions about the future of food? And we try and do it in a sort of impartial way, with the idea of trying to identify points of commonality where possible.
Okay. So could you say a bit more about that point around the agroecology versus kind of these tech solutions, and like say a bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I think, so I'll start briefly with the sort of analysis of, everyone sort of agrees that we have, that the food system contributes very, very substantially to climate changing emissions, to biodiversity loss, water extraction and use, that it is implicated in, on the one hand, the continuing global hunger, 800 million people underweight and go hungry, and then the kind of 2 billion and counting who are overweight and obese, and within that whole injustice piece of the fact that justice along the supply chain, the determinants of health, of access to land and to voice. So we're kind of all on this one page when it comes to this, but then you look at, okay, what does the future look like? And some people emphasize the fact that we have only one land, that we need to really drastically reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, that we need to use as little land as possible to save space for nature, for wild nature. And the way to do that is to be really clever in a kind of technologically savvy way. So if you look at lab meat, cellular agriculture, fermentation, all these sorts of things, it is kind of landless, or at least at the conceptual stage. I mean, there's practical problems. And this is like, so George Monbiot is an advocate of that. And you're sparing a great deal of land for nature. Conceivably, you can do this in a totally decarbonized way if you get your energy infrastructure right. And that basically we can't afford to do something different. If you layer onto that more of a sort of, George Monbiot is arguably a radical, but you have people who come from it from a more, I guess, mainstream, arguably neoliberal perspective, which says, look at global demand for food. It's growing. People are moving to cities. People want meat. We can't do anything about demand. This is the way the world works, and we need to cater to that demand in a way that causes as least environmental damage as possible. And therefore, the way forward is precision agriculture, technological innovation, things like GM, which can perhaps achieve tolerance to kind of the variabilities of weather, or that can be more productive, or that have biofortification, so added vitamin, whatever, zinc or iron or whatever the fortified element is to that. So that's one vision of the future, which could be very radical along the sort of George Monbiot rewilding lines, or could be very, very, let's tweak business as usual. And then there's an alternative point of view, which is the kind of agroecology, which focuses on this idea that actually we've not lost contact with the natural world. We need to kind of reintegrate with nature, and that knowing how our food is produced and knowing our connection will somehow give rise to a more sustainable, environmentally, but also more socially just setup. And this is sort of predicated on the idea that arguably that people are that there is a connection between knowledge and action, and that small is somehow inherently less exploitative and more just. And it might also say that this idea of sparing land to nature for nature increases the separation of human and nature. It's very much focused on ideas about naturalness. And I think, that somehow, perhaps even if you're kind of being quite, that somehow people are inherently good, and that somehow once we rebalance with nature, we will somehow get back to a better state. And I think both these, that also somehow that if we reintegrate with the natural world, our appetites will be more in tune with what nature can provide, that somehow we will stop wanting to eat vast quantities of meat or, Oreos or whatever it might be. And I think both of these are like really, really extreme scenarios. And what we're trying to do is, you can really dismantle both of those as sets of assumptions. And both of them come from a kind of, you can look at them both from a sort of politically left, right perspective. There's kind of no easy political divide there either. And so, yeah, I mean, I guess is that enough? Should I go on? What?
I mean, no, that is super fascinating. So I'm thinking about,